The wind made odd sounds through the wrought iron fence. Far below the hillside, waves struck rock in restless rhythm. The estate loomed above like it had grown out of the cliffs, all sharp edges and dark glass, watching the world from its own. Cold distance Dardanella stepped out of the autocab with one small suitcase and a folder held to her chest. Her shoes were plain, soundless against the marble walk. Even the house didn't seem to notice her arrive. Nemia met her at the door. Tall, severe, eyes like slate. She didn't speak right away, just looked Anel over once, like checking a package for damage. "You're late," Nemia said, though Anil had arrived 7 minutes early. Anil didn't argue. She simply bowed her head slightly and entered the house when invited. The hallway was lined with modern art and soundproof walls. Somewhere deeper in, the house hummed. Not with people, but with ideas. It was like walking into a machine that hadn't been switched on in years. You'll speak only when spoken to. Keep his calendar exactly as structured. No small talk, no sudden movements. Never touch the piano room. You'll sleep in the north quarters. Your meals will arrive separate. Nemia handed her a tablet loaded with encrypted schedules and project codes. It was heavier than it looked.
So was the job.
"How long do assistants usually last?" Enel asked softly. Nemia gave a single dry laugh. One made it 10 days. But she was a liar. With that, the woman turned and vanished down a dark corridor, leaving Enel standing in the silence. The first time she saw Cavil, he didn't see her. He was pacing in the garden atrium, shirt half-buttoned, holding a tablet in one hand and a plum in the other. He muttered to himself as holograms flickered around him, blueprints, models, bits of code. Enel stood outside the glass wall unnoticed, just observing. There was something wild about him, like a bird trying not to fly later. When she entered his workspace to deliver a printout, she placed it precisely 2 inches from his right hand without a sound. He glanced at it, then at her. "You're the new one," he said, frowning slightly. "You smell like salt." "I'm from the coast," she replied. "Don't talk unless you have to." She nodded. The next day he asked for a file from 5 years ago that wasn't even listed in the archives. Enel found it in 7 minutes. The day after that, he demanded coffee from a specific region of the southern mountains. She had it delivered within the hour, piping hot, by the end of the week. He stopped looking irritated when she entered the room. By the end of the month, he'd stopped noticing she was there at all, which was, strangely, a kind of trust. Cavell didn't know. Enel had studied him for 3 years before ever stepping foot in his house, not out of obsession, not for fame, but because his work had once saved her brother's life. She remembered the device. It had blinked like a dying star in her brother's hands, and within hours, stabilized a condition the village doctors didn't even have words for. The tech came from one of Cavill's early projects, something he never even patented properly. He'd made it, given it away, and vanished again. So when she saw the assistant job posted no title, number credits, no promises, she knew it was for him. She didn't send a resume. She sent a hand-drawn map of her village with a note. "You changed someone here? Let me help you change others." 3 days later, a drone dropped a contract on her doorstep. Nemia watched her with open suspicion. "You're too quiet," she said once during a late-night kitchen run. "He likes control. People like you give him the illusion of it." Simply replied, "I'm not here to control him." "No," Nemia said, "but you're going to change him. I've seen it before. It never ends well." One night, Cavell came into his studio furious. His hands shook. He'd thrown out 3 prototypes that day. His hair looked like it had been through wind and wire. Nell watched him pace, rage dripping. Off him, like rain off stone. "I should just shut it all down," he snapped. "None of this works. Not anymore." It used to make sense. He wasn't speaking to her. But she listened. Then very gently, she said, "Maybe it's not that it stopped making sense. Maybe you've just outgrown the old answers." He stared at her like she'd slapped him. "What did you just say?" Nell met his eyes. Maybe the questions have changed. He didn't respond, but the next morning she found her workstation had been moved. Closer to his desk, directly in his line of sight. Weeks passed. She streamlined his schedules, intercepted media requests, managed volatile investors, learned which days he preferred silence and which days he welcomed music. Sometimes, when he worked late, she'd leave herbal tea on the piano room windowsill, never entering, only leaving the cup. He never mentioned it. One night, she heard the piano being played, soft, stumbling, as if someone was relearning their own hands. And the next morning, a note sat on her desk in his sharp handwriting. "You're not invisible. Stop pretending." Nell didn't want to be seen, but she knew deep down she had stepped into something larger than a job. This wasn't just proximity to genius. It was orbit. And the longer she stayed, the more gravity she felt. But she had no idea what was coming. In 2 weeks, Cavill would face the world again, the media, the pressure, the spotlight, and somehow, without asking for it, without wanting it at all, it would find her instead. The announcement came without warning one morning. Nell arrived at her desk to find Cavill pacing, phone pressed to his ear, murmuring in clipped tones she hadn't heard since the investor meeting weeks ago. "Tell them I'll speak. Yes, 1 hour only. They get the launch teaser, not the full spread. No personal questions." He paused, sighed, and said with visible reluctance, "Yes," she coordinated. He ended the call and turned to Anil, who had already begun pulling up media schedules and drafting templates. "You're doing this?" he said. She nodded. "The event where?" "The ArcLight Forum. Center stage. The city's new tech summit." Enel blinked. "You haven't done a public event in 5 years." "I know." She wanted to ask why now, but she knew better. Instead, she asked, "When 9 days?" 9 days to prepare the most unpredictable man in the industry for the world's sharpest spotlight. 9 days to craft perfection out of controlled chaos. The ArcLight Forum glowed like a prism light-bending glass, and hovering displays looping footage from past summits. This was where the most disruptive ideas were born, where empires announced themselves. Enel arrived first with Nemea, checking entrances, scanning crowd patterns, vetting the guest list line by line. She wore a muted slate dress and kept her hair back. She looked like silence given form. The press team murmured to themselves when she passed. "That's his assistant? No comes badge. Weird. I heard she cracked his system codes from memory." She ignored them all. Cavill arrived last, in charcoal, with a pin of oxidized copper at his collar. He looked less like a millionaire, more like a man pulled unwillingly. Into the light. Anel walked with him as they entered backstage. She handed him a microcard with his speech points, timed exactly. He stared at the card, then at her. "What if I forget all this? Then say what's true." He studied her face for a moment longer than necessary. Something moved in his eyes, but it vanished before she could name it. "Stay close," he said. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Things went wrong 30 seconds before he stepped on stage. Loran appeared. He wasn't supposed to be there. His name had been flagged twice during guest list screening. A former investor, brilliant and venomous, the kind of man who smelled leverage in a heartbeat. He approached Anel, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "You must be the infamous schedule ghost," he said, smile like a knife. "I've been dying to meet the one person Cavill can't fire." Anel didn't reach for the glass. "You'll need to leave backstage, sir. This zone's restricted." Loran chuckled too loud. "And yet here I am." Cavill looked over, instantly tensing. "Loran," he said flatly. "Still clawing for relevance?" Loran's eyes flicked between Cavill and Anel. "You know, I always assumed your success came from sheer madness. But now I wonder if you've simply been riding her instincts all along." Before Cavill could react, Anel stepped between them. "The summit starts now. You can either enjoy it from the audience, or security will assist you out." Loran raised his hands in mock surrender. "Careful, girl. Spotlights burn hotter the closer you get." With that, he disappeared into the crowd, and Cavill turned sharply to Anil. "How did he get in?" "I'll find out," she said. He nodded. "Once." But something dark still flickered behind his eyes. Cavill's speech began. A single spotlight followed him to center stage. The audience leaned in, breathless, waiting for him to speak. His voice rang steady, sharper than expected, stripped of drama, heavy with intent. He talked about legacy, entropy, risk, design. He unveiled his next prototype, a fluid energy converter the size of a button. The room erupted. Enele, standing just beyond the curtain, was invisible to the crowd but not to the cameras. One drone, panning wide, caught her silhouette watching, him tall, still luminous with reflection. And that image went viral before the speech even ended. The assistant in shadow. The girl behind the genius. The one who never blinked. Within hours, social threads exploded. Who is she? That's not just an assistant. Look at how he looks at her. I swear she directed his whole speech with just her eyes. Cavell's muse is real and has better posture than God. The aftermath spiraled fast. Mara Marie, journalist with a small but fiercely loyal following, messaged Danelle directly the next day. I don't want cavil. I want your story. 15 minutes. Off record if you want. Public's already writing their own version. Why not tell the truth yourself? Enele didn't reply. Instead, she watched Cavil retreat into silence again, holed up in the piano room for days. She delivered meals he barely touched. He sent no updates, no requests. Nemi found her in the hall one evening and crossed her arms. You should have known this would happen, she said. I didn't step into the spotlight, Enele replied. It moved, and now he's angry, not at me. Nemia didn't argue. The look in her eyes said she wasn't sure anymore. On the third day, Cavil summoned her. She entered the studio to find the prototype shattered on the floor. He sat in the corner, back against the window, looking exhausted. More man than myth. Do you enjoy it? He asked. She tilted her head. Enjoy what? The attention, the mystery. Being the ghost everyone suddenly wants to believe in? Her voice didn't waver. I didn't want this. You could have walked off stage. I did. The camera followed me. He exhaled sharply, almost a laugh, but not quite. I didn't. Build this life for fame, Enele. I built it to disappear. To make things that matter without becoming a product myself. You've always been a product, Cavell. The world just likes to unwrap you slowly. He stared at her, and something fragile rippled between them. A silence too full to breathe in. You've changed everything, he said finally. I know, she whispered. The next week Loran reappeared, this time not in person, but through an invitation. A private tech summit hosted at an island facility. Exclusive, strategic, ruthless. He extended it only to Cavalan CCD&L. Bring your muse, he'd written. We'll see if she can swim in deeper water. Cavil tossed the invite into a flame column in the garden. It turned to ash before the message could load fully, but Enele knew that wasn't the end. The world had seen her now. The world didn't let go of new mysteries easily. A courier arrived that evening with a white envelope. No name, no seal. Inside was a printed still of the viral drone footage, her in shadow. Cavell on stage. On the back, a single sentence. You were never just watching. Cavil didn't show up to work the next day. Or the next Nemia filed a missing report, then retracted it 6 hours later. He does this sometimes, she said, though her jaw clenched. But Enele knew better. He wasn't hiding from the world. He was hiding from himself. And now for the first time since she'd arrived, she wasn't sure if she could find him, but she was sure of something else. He had left the world. It's one final breadcrumb, and he'd left it in her hands. The storm arrived without warning, rolling in over the city like bruised glass, drenching everything in thick sheets of rain. The sky cracked open with white veins of thunder, and the estate shut down automatically. Gates locked, drones grounded. Outside come scrambled Enele. Didn't panic. She'd been through worse storms back home. But this was different. This time, Cavil was gone. No messages, no alerts. Just his absence echoing louder by the hour. She moved through the house, like a ghost retracing another ghost's path. His notes were still pinned to the magnet wall in the studio. Tea stains still ringed his usual desk spot. One of the prototypes flickered quietly under a cloth. Half-built and humming, Nemi remained silent most of the day, but Enele caught her. Watching, sharp, pied, restless, like a guard who'd lost her prisoner and didn't know whether to grieve or prepare for war. On the second night of the storm, a vehicle appeared at the gate. Not Cavil. It was Siran, a recording artist known more for his silences than his songs. Siren walked into the estate soaked and unsmiling, carrying a guitar case and a small duffel bag. His invitation had come weeks earlier, one of Cavil's last professional moves before his disappearance. He said, "I could use the studio," Siren explained, drying his hands near the vestibule heater. "Told me to come whether he was here or not." Enel frowned. "You were scheduled for next month." He moved it up. Siren glanced at her, then out the storm-sealed windows. "I figured if he's not here, you'd be the one running things." He wasn't wrong. She assigned him a guest room, unlocked his access to the sound lab, and resumed her quiet orbit of duties. But something about him unsettled the balance. He wasn't loud, not disruptive. He simply watched the way she handled the house systems, watched her move through Cavil's space with careful fingers, watched her read every note Cavil had ever left behind like they were scripture. By the third night, Slaren had written a full track. Nellie heard it playing from the studio long after midnight. The melody curled upward, simple and haunting-like. Someone had turned longing into water and let it flow. The next morning, she found him in the greenhouse, barefoot, humming into a recording pin on his shirt. "You wrote that here?" she asked. "I don't write. I listen. The house gave me that song." Enel tilted her head. "The house doesn't talk. Maybe not to you." Ace stared at each other for a long moment, the sound of dripping leaves ticking between them. Then he asked, "Do you think he left because of you?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know. Cavil's absence wrapped around everything like static. Enel could feel it in the places he used to sit, in the way the fireplace didn't light until the fourth command, in the unfinished tasks. Piling quietly in her inbox, he hadn't left a note, but he'd left a trace. 1. Prototype and mark trusted under a linen cloth in the private lab. Enel wasn't supposed to go in without his clearance. But he wasn't there to stop her now. She uncovered it. A palm-sized cube pulsing faintly. Inside it, a strand of wire glowed faintly red, moving in a rhythm like breath.
Ow.
She tapped the cube gently. It blinked and projected a flickering string of images, blueprint fragments, vocal echoes. A piece of code signed only with his initials .E and ELE recognized the sequence. It was from the first device he'd ever made. The one that had saved her brother, a return to origin, a confession. "In circuitry, sir, caught her in the lab 2 nights later, so he left you the bones of something," said, leaning against the wall. "Figures. You shouldn't be in. Here, neither should you." His smile was sharp, but not cruel, more curious than anything. "It's strange," he added. "He built this whole kingdom out of solitude, but the minute someone gets close, he burns the bridge and watches from the other side." Enel said nothing. "Did you love him?" Siren asked suddenly. She looked up. "I don't think that's the word," she replied. "No, love implies symmetry. What we had wasn't that." Siren crossed the room and gently touched the cube. "You don't build things like this for people you forget," he said. The storm didn't let up. On the 6th night, a window cracked under the pressure of the wind. Systems failed. Light flickered. The estate blinked in and out of its own memory. In the main hall, Enel stood with Siren and Nemia around a flickering floor display, trying to reset the emergency power grid. Her hands moved fast. Automatic. "You know this place better than anyone," Siren said, watching her override the security console. Nemia looked up sharply. "Better than him, even." For a moment, Enel didn't deny it, but she paused long enough for them to wonder. The following morning, Cavell returned. Not with ceremony, not with apology. He walked through the front door soaked and silent, a travel. Bag slung over his shoulder, his face drawn with windburn and sleep-dash deprivation. Nema exhaled so sharply it sounded like a curse. Siren raised one eyebrow and stepped back. Emma stood perfectly still, watching him approach. He stopped just a foot. "From her? You stayed," he said quietly. "The storm never scared me." He looked past her at the lab doors. At the hallway where the cube prototype surely still rested, open and exposed. You saw it? Yes. He nodded slowly, like that answer had both hurt and healed him. Later in the piano room, Cavil lit a fire and stared into it for nearly an hour before speaking again. I didn't leave because of you, he said. She didn't interrupt. I left because I realized, if I stayed, I'd have to admit I'm not the only one who understands my own work anymore, and that scared the hell out of me. Enel sat across from him. It shouldn't. He looked at her, something raw breaking loose in his voice. Do. Weren't supposed to fit this world. I made it to keep people out, and maybe you built it wrong. The silence that followed was not tense. It was finally free the next day. Cavell did something unthinkable. He handed her full access, his personal console, his archives, even the master key to his long-forgotten projects. What am I supposed to do with this? She asked. He leaned against the desk, eyes tired but steady. Build something. And so she did. Not just alone. Not just in his shadow, Saran offered a melody. Nemia helped build a distribution plan. Cavell let her pull from his unused concepts together. They created something new, something that didn't look like his past or her silence. It looked like both of them moving forward side by side. But the world outside hadn't forgotten the image, the viral moment, the girl in shadow, and they were waiting for what she would do next. The official launch day arrived, wrapped in haze and heat, with the sky still heavy from the week-long storm. A slow sun pushed through the clouds, casting sharp angles across the estate's long silver walkway, now cleaned and lined with motion. Lights dot inside, the studio glowed quietly, no chaos. No tension, but one thing was missing. Cavil, he hadn't come downstairs all morning, and Enel had stopped waiting. The new prototype, their shared creation, was set for public reveal. Not to investors, not to journalists. Two people, farmers, teachers, refugees, hospital staff. The cube wasn't meant for applause. It was meant for use. An adaptive energy node that could power small homes, regulate temperature, clean water, connect villages. Cavil had designed the shell. Enel had built the heart. Siren named it Echo, and now it was hers to launch. He's not coming, is he? Aaron asked her, adjusting his collar beside the transport drone. He might, Enel replied, but she didn't sound hopeful. She sounded ready. The event was held at a community center on the edge of the scene, now fitted with a temporary pavilion. It was not glamorous, it was not branded, but it was full. People stood shoulder to shoulder, many of them barefoot or soaked from the morning surf, all waiting, not for a show, but for something real. Elise stepped up to the open-air platform. No stage lights. It's just wind and breath and eyes. She had never addressed a crowd in her life, but she'd spoken to storms, so. She began, "My name is Enel. I was born in a village that doesn't appear on most maps. The first time I saw a light that didn't come from a fire, it came from a device someone had forgotten to patent. It worked. It saved someone I love." She held up the new cube. "This is not a product. It's not a pitch. It's a return." People leaned closer. There's power in silence, in patience, in staying just long enough to understand what everyone else walks past. She paused. The man whose name you know helped shape this, but it wasn't his alone. It came from what he forgot, and what I remembered. The wind caught her hair. The ocean hissed in approval. This belongs to all of us now. The applause came slowly. Uncertain at first, then it rose. Thick with feeling, not for fame, but for recognition. For the first time, they weren't cheering someone they couldn't reach. They were cheering her MyRAE. The journalist appeared afterward with a voice recorder, half hidden in her palm. "If you're ready," she said, "I'd still like to tell your story." Enel looked at her, smiled gently, and said, "Let them write their own." Then she walked away. Hours later, after the crowd had scattered and the sun dipped back behind its cloud curtain, Enel returned to the estate. She didn't expect him to be there, but he was, sitting on the stairs of the west balcony, hair wind-ruffled, looking every bit like someone who had almost missed everything. She sat beside him without a word, For a while, they watched the horizon in silence. Then he spoke. "You said everything I never could." "No," she replied. "I said everything you didn't want to." Let out a breath, half a laugh, half a surrender. "I was scared they'd forget me," he admitted. "They won't," she said. "But now they'll remember something more." The stars came out early that night. It was one of those rare skies where the atmosphere burned clear after days of storm. "What happens now?" Cavil asked. She thought for a moment. "You rest," she said. "And I keep going." He looked over at her, like he wasn't sure if she meant she was leaving. "I never wanted to be in the spotlight," Enel continued. "But I'm not hiding from it either, so we switch roles," he asked. "No, we stand beside each other. Different lights, same path." He nodded slowly, like someone finally hearing a language they forgot they knew. She didn't move. Into his space. He didn't reclaim hers. Instead, a third room opened, one they hadn't used before. A studio with shared access. 2 chairs, 1 large whiteboard. A single plant at the window. Sira and visited sometimes. Nemia stayed, still scowling, still watching. But more at peace now that the war was over. The world moved on. But it kept a window open for her. And when the next product launched, affordable, accessible, anonymous, no one asked for Cavell. They asked for Nell. And this time, she'd stepped into the light without flinching. Not because she wanted the stage, but because she'd built it in his journals. Cavell wrote only one final entry. "Before retiring from his solo projects, she didn't steal my spotlight. She taught me how to share it.